Brock Bowers, give us the latest, Caleb, on his injury. What do we have with Brock Bowers, the tight end from Georgia? How long is he out, as he was banged up on Saturday?
So Brock Bowers is out for a few weeks is basically the official position, which isn't an official number, but he had a high ankle sprain and he had to have surgery. It was in the first half of Georgia's 37-20 win over Vanderbilt. Even if so the recovery time is about 4 to 6 weeks. That's before he can get to be 100%. But as we know, Brock Bowers, or from the Tua Tagovailoa injury in 2019, that can be a nagging injury that slows you for the rest of the year too. So
well, and the Cedric Tillman last year too was a high ankle injury. He had the rope procedure or whatever that's called. Boy, that worked out real well. And I think Brock Bowers opens up an opportunity for Tennessee to beat Georgia. That sounds insane-o, but I'm not 100% sold on Carson Beck. I think Brock Bowers was the guy you check down and you save a play with. And to say that a tight end could affect who wins the SEC East or SEC overall sounds insane-o, but Brock Bowers being out for an extended period of time and quite possibly the Tennessee game, I think it's huge. That's a tight end. So what the H, but I think it holds some merit. You?
Has insano become a word? Did I miss that grammatical transition?
It's big with the 45-year-old plus demographic.
Okay, so it's like it's worse than just being insane.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a whole nother step. Insano is when you really affect society. Insane is just when you're hearing voices and you don't actually act it out.
It's like when you say bizarre and then you move it up to bizarro.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What was the question? Oh, no. Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, you can't just think of him as a tight end. I mean, he does everything, and he draws double coverage. He's a terrific blocker on the edge, which tight ends are supposed to be able to do. Has the best hands in the league. Can run. I hadn't seen anybody catch him yet. He runs like a wide receiver. If you put him in the backfield, he might be Georgia's best running back. That's all that Georgia loses. Everything is built around him, and he is the player that opposing teams scheme for. I mean, Brock Bowers is so impressive. I kind of wonder if maybe he said, I'll do the surgery on myself right here on the sidelines and fix this and come back and play in the second half. He's Superman. So it gives Tennessee hope? You bet it does. It gives everybody hope on Georgia's schedule. Georgia can't afford to sleepwalk through a game like it did at Vanderbilt's construction site Saturday. He's got, they've got to tighten things up and play every game as though that championship really is on the line, because he's a big loss. It helps that Ladd McConkey has returned to health at wide receiver. Without the two of them, they would be more vulnerable than ever. But that's a big loss, and it's a big loss for college football. I love watching that guy play.
Great. Caleb?
Yeah, John, I would add that before I ask you my question, that I'll tell you both. I think the scariest part for Georgia about Brock Bowers getting hurt is it forces Mike Bobo to use his brain again. And that's going to be really rough. But I will say, John, do you think that they could even – are we sure they're going to be undefeated even before they get to Tennessee? Like, I know whatever you think about Billy Napier in Florida, they're coming off a bye in 2 weeks. So will Georgia. That game's in Jacksonville. Then they have Missouri, and then they have Ole Miss. Without Brock Bowers, if they play down to any of those opponents, they could slip up, couldn't they?
Certainly against Ole Miss. You got to keep in mind, Georgia's defense, this Georgia defense is not last year's defense, and it's not the 2021 Georgia defense. Georgia is not as good at what it doesn't have the running back depth or the overall talent at running back that it had in either years. And it doesn't have Stetson Bennett to make just game-turning plays in the clutch time after time. And now it doesn't have Brock Bowers. I thought when you have a player like Brock Bowers on your bad days, on those off days, when you're kind of drowsy, wandering through those all that construction going on at Vanderbilt Stadium, trying to not hoping nothing falls on your head. When you're going through all that, you can depend on Brock Bowers. You certainly saw that again, the win over Auburn, a come from behind win over Auburn. This is a huge loss. Other than losing a quarterback, there's no bigger loss in college football to me.
Did you hear the latest that Vanderbilt did get a title sponsor for their stadium? It's going to be the Lee Construction Stadium.
I love that. I thought they might call it, maybe instead of the, how Florida became the Swamp. I wonder if Vanderbilt Stadium could become the Crane.
It's very nice. It's very nice. So for those that don't know, Vanderbilt refurbishing their stadium instead of blowing it up, which they should. And the stadium is undergoing construction during the season, which is usually frowned upon. You like to get that done before the season begins, but good for Vanderbilt. They've got a whole new way of going about things. Let's just work on it. Maybe they could start wearing big orange construction caps instead of helmets, John.
Yeah, wear those yellow construction helmets. Well, they are yellow and black or gold and black. So, yeah, it's an atmosphere killer. There's no doubt about that. Another atmosphere killer. Can you imagine Ken Seals, Vanderbilt's quarterback, is trying to quiet the Georgia crowd there so he can call plays? It's down there in the end zone.
Back to Bowers. G. Smith says Bowers only accounts for 26% of his passes. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Okay, I see that number, but 26% for a tight end is a lot, number one. Number two, he is also getting other people open by drawing extra attention, right?
Yeah, the whole receiving core benefits from his very presence. And I will say that Georgia has another good tight end in Oscar Delp. He's a promising player, but he just can't do all the things that Brock Bowers can. Neither can any other tight end in college football.
No, well, I mean, Brock Bowers is a special talent. Sorry, Caleb.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's 5 stars for depth, but then there's special players that go beyond just your average 5-star. Eric Berry wasn't just a 5-star safety. He was a special safety, and there was no 5-star safety that could just come in and replace him if he got hurt at Tennessee. And
that's a really good call. And you're talking about an Eric Berry who was honored the other day, is that he wasn't just a safety. Like Bowers isn't just a tight end. I mean, Eric Berry, you could have put him at running back. He could have played anywhere on the field. You could have put him at linebacker. He could play cornerback. Played quarterback in high school. He's the kind of guy that just impacts the game no matter where he is. And one of the biggest collisions I've ever seen in college football was between him and Tim Tebow there in the Swamp. But yeah, you're right. Those kind of players, though, they don't come along every year.
Hey, John, I want to get off topic for a half second. Who is the best player that you covered that was also, he was a great player, but he was a great person? Because we discussed last week, mine was Eric Berry. He had to answer questions because he didn't really have a quarterback that could do so in place for most of his career, and they weren't good. And he always came out there and he answered the questions. But you've covered the Steelers, you've covered other teams. Who is the best dude out there that was also a very, very good player?
Yeah, well, Eric Berry comes to mind. I mean, that's something I'd have to covered a lot of ground there, Dave. I've covered a lot of players, but you know what? I'd go way back. Talk about going old school. I'll go beyond old school. I'll go old school O, kind of like Insane from Insane O. Okay, I go back to Archie Manning.
Wow.
Yeah,
you did go back there, John.
He took a lot. I've heard from a lot of New Orleans media. He took a lot of heat and always would stand and talk to everybody after every Saints loss when it wasn't his fault that they were losing.
I can remember. I mean, keep in mind, he was a legend at Ole Miss. A legend. I mean, they named the speed limits are 18 miles per hour now on campus because of Archie Manning's number. Then he goes to New Orleans where he's expected to be saviors. There are no saviors for those Saints. They were too bad. and too conditioned to losing. So he actually made All-Pro one year and was Offensive Player of the Year. Incredible achievement. But as Caleb pointed out, I've been in that locker room. I mean, it was almost like everybody else was gone. It was after another Saints defeat. Never had a winning season when he played. And there'd be little kids running around in the locker room. And there was Archie Manning there at his cubicle talking to some guy who might be working for a student paper. He never, ever changed. He was that way, loss after loss, game after game, season after season. And also, he's one of the best storytellers of any football players I've ever been around, in the sense that he had a great memory for details. And one of my favorite conversations with him was talking about all the weird stuff that happened with the Saints. And he had a really good memory for that. So he really stands out. I know it's a completely different era, but he was just a tremendous player and a great person, and a great person to have in your locker room.